I'll pause and you can raise a question. You can also just, while I'm going, put a thought or a question into the chat. Um, once we get out of our, not just our comfort zone, but out of our culture, there's all sorts of things where other people are perfectly safe, but we're not. And I remember encountering this when I was in London for the first time in 1988, and it just cracked me up because when we cross the street, we're about to cross the street. What do? We look left and right, but we always first look left, correct? Because that's where traffic's going to hit us first. Well, that's not true when you're in London. You got to look right first. And they have enough tourists that they know to warn people, look right. One little hint, and that is that my experience in the UK is that they're very mindful of pedestrians, more mindful than they're pretty mindful where I live too, but always been very mindful of pedestrians in the crosswalk. There's all sorts of dangers out there when we're hiking, things we might run into, including dangerous cliffs. If you ever been to Cliffs of Moher, this is in Ireland. Warning, cliffs can kill. You're not killing. You kidding me? Those cliffs are like 500 feet high. So you want to be careful. They look beautiful. You just go right over to the edge and peer down. Don't fall in. One thing I do say in this class, oops, we went a little bit too far there, is that just remember, number one, the world is safer than we think. And I'm not just saying that simply from a man's perspective. I'm saying it from many women travelers that I've talked to as well. And we covered this a bit in our class yesterday on traveling solo, and that the negative things, the fearful things, the bad things, whatever, they are always much bigger in our mind and in our consciousness than positive things. Positive things kind of slide by us all the time. The negative things arrest our attention. I know that one book I read said that this is because we've evolved over millions of years to be aware of dangers, especially when we used to live more nomadic lifestyles and with more wild animals and things by us and plants that we were hunting and foraging for. So, we are a little more attuned toward the negative than the positive. But as I've traveled the world and as I've talked to people and gotten to know folks that have done a lot of traveling, including a lot of women who've done solo traveling around the world, as well as places in the US, they would attest that generally the world's safer than we think. Okay. So we watch movies, we hear news, and we hear of dangers. And this little story with this photo, these are children in a region of Colombia I went to visit in 2019. And I always tell this story about my own awareness of being safe or dangerous. When I've been to Colombia twice, 2013 and 2014 and 2018. And the people would say things to me like, oh my gosh, you went to Colombia. Isn't that a really dangerous place? And my response is, no, it's not a dangerous place. It's a very safe place. And I went to one of the most dangerous parts of Colombia. This is the Choco region where I took this picture of these children. It's Afro-Colombia. It's an area in Western Colombia. It is poorer. Has been settled by people who are descendants of slaves that the Spaniards brought over to work in the mines. It's a mining region. It gets like 350 inches of rain a year. It's like a tropical rainforest, but a beautiful place, beautiful people. And there are armed groups in that area still. Colombia has suffered from some difficulties with armed groups over the decades. And there are armed groups in this area. But my son and daughter-in-law live there working with an aid agency, a church-based aid agency. And we spent about, 5 days with them in the Choco. We were the few white people there and felt perfectly safe the whole time. My son said he lived there for over 2 years. He never felt unsafe. And he said, well, why am I safe? Because number one, the armed groups don't touch outsiders, people who aren't from here. And generally they don't touch most people. They have their own interests, their own things they're doing. And Europeans, they just don't mess with. The church workers, they don't mess with. So you're perfectly safe. But Dad, put away your camera. Don't walk through town taking pictures. And he told me a story of a group of pastors, Mennonite pastors from Canada, that came down to see a relief project they had been giving money to. They wanted to see how it was working. This is a region of Colombia, by the way, where the people grow coca, which is the basis for cocaine. And this project was helping the people switch over from growing coca to cacao, which is the basis for chocolate. But they make chocolate out of cacao beans, which is but both are native to the area. And these pastors had big cameras and they were walking all over town. And one of them went over a bridge into a certain part of town he shouldn't be going into. And my son said that someone in his office got a phone call within minutes and said, you need to tell the pastors to get out of that part of town and put their cameras away. And my son explained to me, he said, you don't know who you're taking a picture of when you're walking down this street. You could be a member of an armed group. You don't want to take a picture of a policeman. You're perfectly safe, but don't do that. And so I never felt unsafe, including in Bogota, in places where there's barbed wire and glass on top of buildings and things. You have to, it's safer than you think, but you also have to have your head on and learn things. And so in this case, my son, who by that time had become a local, told me how to be safe, just like it is in New York, Chicago, or Philadelphia, or Atlanta, any large American city. We all know that there's things we shouldn't do, maybe in big cities. In the U.S., some places just require discretion. This is Colombia. That's actually Bogota. I found it very unusual to see militarized police in Colombia, policemen with helmets on and semi-automatic rifles. And my son said, that's normal in Colombia. That's just the way they are. And, anyway, things require discretion. I never felt unsafe or in danger my entire time in Colombia, nor did my wife. Another example, in Bogota, you learn that if you're going to take a cab, you need a cab that has one of these medallions, big stickers on the side with a number. When we flew into the airport and went through, customs, passport control, it took us well over an hour, came out, there was a long line of people queued up to get taxis, and a long line of taxis coming in. As the taxis came up to the stand where you could pick one up, they all had these numbers on the side. Now that's on the rear passenger door, but the driver's door has the same tag on it. And I noticed the drivers opening their doors and then showing them. I thought, what are they doing? My son said they're taking down the number. They're making sure that you're in it, and they're helping you be safe, so that any person in a yellow car doesn't drive up and get you. So you learn these customs and these things when you go somewhere. We travel the world to experience its beauty and its diversity. By the way, this is Bogota again. And it would be a shame if we let fear keep us from experiencing that beauty and diversity. Whoops, that went the wrong way. So the number one thing I tell people when you're traveling, if you want to stay safe, if you want to stay healthy, anything, is just know the risks of where you're going. Nothing beats knowing the risks of where you're going. And I had a whole class this morning about guidebooks. So I tell people, read guidebooks, look at travel forums, get advice from locals, read online links. There's all sorts of places you can get information. There's really no reason to go somewhere and find yourself wondering whether